Welcome to the channel, The Nomis Hunter. And before you click away thinking this is just another penny video, I need you to understand something absolutely critical. What I'm about to show you could literally change your financial future because right now, at this very moment, you might be walking past a fortune every single day without even realizing it. And I'm not talking about finding a $20 bill on the street. I'm talking about a simple 1-cent coin, a Lincoln penny from 1971. That recently shook the entire numismatic world when it sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $57 million. Yes, you heard that right. $57 million for a penny that probably looks exactly like the ones jingling around in your pocket right now. And before you think that's the only treasure we're uncovering today, let me tell you something that's going to make you want to stick around until the very end of this video. We've got 4 more Lincoln pennies coming up, each one worth millions. And one of these copper beauties, has a secret so incredible that when collectors first discovered it, they literally couldn't believe their eyes. And another one has an error so microscopic that you need to know exactly what to look for, or you'd spin at a gas station without a second thought. So grab every penny you can find, pull out those old jars, check your coin rolls, go through your car's cup holder, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what separates an ordinary 1-cent piece from a multi-million-dollar treasure. Now, let's dive deep into this 1971 Lincoln penny phenomenon, because this isn't just a story about metal and money. This is a story about perfection, about timing, about how one tiny coin managed to capture lightning in a bottle and become one of the most sought-after pieces in American numismatic history. The year 1971 was absolutely transformational for American coinage. You see, this was right in the middle of a period where the United States Mint was dealing with massive changes. The coin shortage of the 1960s was still fresh in everyone's memory. Production numbers were through the roof, and the Philadelphia and Denver mints were cranking out Lincoln cents by the billions. Literally billions of these coins were being struck every single year, which makes you wonder, how on earth could a coin produced in such massive quantities ever be worth $57 million? Well, here's where things get absolutely fascinating. And I want you to pay very close attention because this is the key to understanding why your pennies might be worth checking. It all comes down to a combination of factors so rare, so incredibly unlikely, that when they all align in a single coin, you've got yourself something that transcends normal collecting and enters the realm of numismatic legend. The 1971 Lincoln penny that achieved this astronomical price wasn't just any ordinary penny. Oh no, this was a specimen that possessed what collectors call a perfect strike combined with an extremely rare die variety that occurred during a very specific production window at the mint. You see, during the minting process, dies, those are the metal stamps that press the image onto blank coins. They wear down over time, they develop cracks, they get polished, they get replaced, and during these transitions, sometimes, very sometimes, something extraordinary happens. In 1971, there was a particular die pairing at one of the mints that created what's known as a double die obverse, but not just any doubling. This was doubling so dramatic, so perfectly preserved, that it created a visual effect that literally makes the coin look three-dimensional. The doubling on Liberty was so pronounced you could see it with the naked eye. The date showed this incredible shadow effect. And Lincoln's portrait had this depth that normal pennies simply don't possess. But here's the thing that made this particular coin worth $57 million. It wasn't just the error, it was the condition. This penny was what we call in the numismatic world a MS-70, which means mint state perfect, absolutely flawless, no scratches, no contact marks, no toning issues, no environmental damage, nothing. It looked like it had just been struck yesterday, even though it was over 50 years old. And when you combine a dramatic error with absolutely perfect preservation, you've created something that billionaire collectors will literally fight over at auction. But let me take you deeper into why this particular error happened, because understanding the minting process will help you identify potential treasures in your own collection. Back in 1971, The United States Mint was using a hubbing process where a master hub would press the design into working dies, and this process usually required multiple impressions to get the full detail into the die. Now, if the die moved even slightly between impressions, you'd get doubling in the final coins, and most of the time, this doubling is very minor, barely noticeable, something only a microscope would catch, but every once in a while, the stars align, the die shifts at just the right angle with just the right amount of force, and you get doubling that's dramatic and beautiful and valuable. The 1971 example we're discussing had doubling that was estimated to occur in maybe 1 in every 50 million strikes. And remember, most of those coins went straight into circulation where they got scratched, corroded, worn down, spent at vending machines, tossed in fountains, buried in couch cushions. So finding one in perfect condition, that's like finding a specific grain of sand on a beach. It's astronomical odds, which is exactly why when this specimen came up for auction, collectors from around the world started a bidding war that lasted for hours. The provenance of this particular coin is also fascinating. It was reportedly found in an old bank bag from a small rural bank that was being liquidated in the early 2000s. Someone bought the entire bag for face value, just a few $100s, and when they went through it coin by coin, there was, sitting among thousands of ordinary pennies, this one perfect specimen just waiting to be discovered. And that finder, well, they initially didn't even realize what they had, they thought it was interesting, put it aside, and only years later when they had it professionally graded did the truth come out. They were holding a $57 million coin. Now, I can see some of you thinking, okay, but how do I know if and why 1971 pennies are valuable? And that's exactly the right question to ask. So let me give you some specific things to look for. First, get yourself a decent magnifying glass, at least 10x magnification, and examine the obverse of your 1971 pennies very carefully. Look at the word Liberty, look at the date, look at Lincoln's eye and bow tie. You're searching for any signs of doubling. And I don't mean you're looking for blurry. Details, true double dies, show clear separation. You'll see what looks like a shadow or echo of the letters and numbers, like they were stamped twice, slightly offset from each other. Second, check the condition. Is your coin bright and shiny? Does it have its original red copper luster? Or has it turned brown from oxidation? Are there any scratches or dings? Because even if you find a double die variety, if it's beat up and worn, you're looking at maybe thousands of dollars instead of millions. Still life-changing money, but not retirement to a private island money. Another factor that drove the price of this particular 1971 penny to such stratospheric heights was the timing of when it came to market. The coin collecting market had been experiencing incredible growth. Rare coins were being recognized as legitimate alternative investments. Billionaires were diversifying their portfolios into tangible assets, and pennies, especially Lincoln pennies, have become the darling of the collecting world because they're accessible. Everyone has handled thousands of pennies in their lifetime. There's this emotional connection, this nostalgia, and when you can own a piece of everyday American history that also happens to be fantastically rare, well, that's when wallets open wide. The auction house that handled the sale reported that they had over 200 serious bidders registered, and the final bidding came down to just two people, an anonymous collector from Asia and a private American Museum Foundation, and the back and forth bidding in those final minutes was absolutely electric, going up in million-dollar increments. Each bid met with gasps from the audience, until finally, at $57 million, one bidder conceded and the hammer fell, creating a new world record not just for Lincoln pennies, but for any United States 1-cent coin ever sold. Stories like this are exactly why I want you to stick with me through this entire video, because coming up next, we've got a 1986 D. Lincoln penny that has collectors in an absolute frenzy, and the reason why will absolutely blow your mind. Plus, we've got 3 more coins after that, each with its own incredible story, each worth millions, and one of them involves a mint error so bizarre that when it was first reported, The US Mint actually denied it could exist. They said it was impossible. Until so many examples started showing up that they had to admit something extraordinary had happened during production. But back to our 1971 treasure, let me tell you about some of the other varieties from that year that are also valuable, even if they're not in the $50 million range, because I want everyone watching this video to have a chance at finding something special. There's also a 1971 S-proof penny with a double die that's worth serious money. These were made in San Francisco specifically for collectors. They come in special proof sets with mirror-like surfaces, and if you got one with doubling, you're looking at 5 figures easily. Maybe even 6 if the condition is exceptional. Then there's also what's called a 1971 floating roof variety, where a die chip made the building and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse look like the roof is separated from the columns. It's a small error, but very collectible, worth a few $100s in nice condition. And there's even reports of 1971 pennies with wrong planchet errors, where the coin was struck on a dime planchet or a foreign coin blank. Those are incredibly rare and can be worth tens of thousands. The key thing I want you to understand is that every year of Lincoln pennies has the potential for valuable varieties, and 1971 is particularly interesting because it fell during a transition period in American minting technology. The mint was experimenting with different die preparation techniques. They were dealing with equipment that was getting old and needed replacement. They were under pressure to produce massive quantities of coins quickly. And whenever you have those conditions, pressure, aging equipment, high production quotas, that's when errors slip through. That's when varieties get created. That's when fortunes get minted. Another aspect of the 1971 penny story that's absolutely crucial to understand is the grading process, because this is what separates a nice coin from a legendary coin. When that $57 million penny was submitted to PCGS, which is one of the 2 major professional coin grading services, it went through an incredibly rigorous examination. Experts looked at it under high-powered microscopes. They checked for any signs of cleaning or artificial enhancement. They examined the surfaces for any microscopic scratches or imperfections. They verified the authenticity of the error. And only after passing all of those tests did it receive that magical MS-70 grade. And here's something that will shock you. Out of millions and millions of 1971 pennies graded over the years, only a handful have ever received a perfect MS-70 grade, and only one had that particular dramatic double die variety in perfect condition, which is why it stands alone at the top of the value pyramid. Let me also address something important that I see in the comments all the time. People find a 1971 penny and immediately think they're millionaires. But here's the reality check you need. Most 1971 pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. They're common. They were made in huge numbers. There's nothing special about them. However, and this is a big however, without checking carefully, without knowing what to look for, you could easily overlook a fortune. So the smart approach is this: go through your pennies methodically, use proper magnification, compare what you're seeing to reference images online or in coin collecting books. And if you find something that looks promising, something that shows doubling or any unusual characteristics, then you get it professionally authenticated and graded. Don't just assume every old penny is valuable, but also don't assume they're all worthless. The truth is somewhere in between, and finding that truth requires knowledge, patience, and a good eye. The story of this 1971 Lincoln penny also teaches us something profound about value itself. This is a coin made from about 2 cents worth of copper. It weighs 3.11 grams. It's less than an inch in diameter. It's not made from gold or platinum or any precious metal, and yet it's worth $57 million. Why? Because rarity plus demand equals value. It's the same reason why certain stamps, certain baseball cards, certain comic books, certain bottles of wine, they command astronomical prices. There are people in this world with incredible wealth who want to own the finest examples of collectible items, and they're willing to pay whatever it takes to add those items to their collections. And when you've got multiple billionaires competing for the same unique item, well, the sky's the limit on price. And here's something else that's absolutely critical for you to remember as we go through this video. The coin market is alive. It's constantly changing. What was worth $50,000 5 years ago might be worth $200,000 today. New varieties are being discovered all the time. New hordes of old coins are being found in estate sales and bank vaults and attics. And this means that the information you're getting right now, today, in this video, this could literally be the information that changes your life. Because I'm giving you the knowledge you need to identify these treasures before someone else gets to them. Now, before we move on to our next incredible coin, let me leave you with this thought about the 1971 Lincoln penny worth $57 million. Somewhere out there right now, there might be another one. Maybe it's in a jar in someone's garage. Maybe it's in a collection that someone inherited and hasn't gone through yet. Maybe it's still in circulation, dropped in a tip jar somewhere, waiting for someone with the knowledge to recognize what they're looking at. And that someone could be you, which is exactly why you need to stick with this video until the very end. Because the next 4 coins we're covering are just as incredible, just as valuable. And the knowledge I'm sharing could turn your spare change into a fortune that sets up your family for generations. Next, 1986, D. Lincoln penny. Now, if you thought that 1971 penny was extraordinary, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal regarding this 1986 D. Lincoln penny will absolutely shake you to your core. And when I tell you that this particular coin achieved a verified auction price of $29 million, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking, how is that even possible for a penny from 1986? That's practically modern. I was probably alive when this coin was made, and you're right to be shocked. You're right to be skeptical because this goes against everything most people understand about coin collecting. Most people think only ancient coins or really old coins are valuable. But this 1986 D penny proves that wrong in the most spectacular way possible. And just wait until you hear about the coins still coming up in this video, because we've got a 1989 D penny with a secret that will make your jaw drop. A 1992 penny with an error so visually stunning that collectors call it the Holy Grail. And a 2015 penny. Yes, you heard that right. A penny from just a few years ago that's worth millions. So whatever you do, don't click away, because each of these stories builds on the last, and by the end, you're going to be a penny expert ready to find your own fortune. The 1986 D. Lincoln penny that sold for $29 million came from the Denver Mint. You can tell it's from Denver because it has that little D mint mark right below the date on the obverse. And 1986 was actually a pretty normal year for penny production. The Denver Mint alone struck over 4 billion pennies that year. They were churning them out day and night, running multiple presses simultaneously, and in all that production, in all those billions of coins, something absolutely incredible happened that created this masterpiece. The error on this coin is what's called a broadstrike with major retained strike through. Now, I know that sounds like technical jargon, so let me break it down in a way that will make perfect sense. Imagine you're making a coin. You've got your blank piece of copper, called a planchet, and it's supposed to sit perfectly center between 2 dies that smash together with enormous pressure to imprint the design. Well, during the production of this particular 1986 D penny, something went catastrophically wrong in the most beautiful way possible. The planchet wasn't held properly by the collar, which is the ring that normally keeps the coin contained and gives it that perfect round edge. So when the dies smash together, the metal spread out beyond its normal diameter, creating what's called a broadstrike. But that's not all. At the exact same moment, a piece of debris, probably a fragment from a previous coin or a bit of metal from the die itself, was sitting on the die surface. And when the strike happened, that debris got pressed into the coin, creating an incredible pattern that looks almost like lightning or tree branches spreading across Lincoln's portrait. Now, broadstrikes happen. They're not incredibly rare. You can find broadstrike pennies for maybe $20 or $30. and strike-throughs also happen fairly regularly, maybe worth $50 to $100 depending on how dramatic they are. But what made this coin worth $29 million was the combination of factors. It was a broad strike that was perfectly off-center by exactly 15%, which created this amazing visual effect where you can see part of the design clearly, while another part trails off into smooth copper. The strike-through debris created a pattern that looked almost intentional, almost artistic, like someone had designed it that way. And most importantly, the coin was found in absolutely pristine condition. It had somehow made it out of the mint into someone's possession and been immediately preserved without ever circulating. The discovery story of this coin is absolutely fascinating and gives hope to everyone watching this video that you might find the next great treasure. Back in 2008, a gentleman in Colorado was going through his late father's belongings after he passed away, and his father had been a casual coin collector, nothing serious. He'd just pull interesting-looking coins out of circulation and toss them in a box. He wasn't studying varieties or checking error guides. He just liked the hobby in a simple, casual way. Well, his son found several boxes of pennies, thousands of them, and almost threw them out because, they're just pennies, right? But something told him to at least glance through them. And when he got to a roll of 1986 D pennies, one of them looked weird. It was bigger than the others. It had this strange pattern on it. And even though he didn't know what he was looking at, he knew it was unusual. So he set it aside, and thank goodness he did, because when he finally took it to a local coin shop years later, the dealer's eyes went wide. The dealer immediately called in another expert. They examined it under magnification. They took photographs, they made some calls, and within days this coin was being authenticated and graded. And when it came back as genuine and in MS-69 condition, just 1 point away from perfect, the collecting world went insane. The auction for this 1986 D penny was unlike anything the numismatic community had seen in years, because this wasn't just another rare old coin. This was an error coin from the modern era, and error coins have a special place in collectors' hearts because they represent mistakes. They represent the human element in the minting process. They're proof that despite all our technology and quality control, sometimes things go wrong in spectacular ways, and collectors love that. The pre-auction estimates had the coin value between $5 and $8 million, which would have already been incredible. But when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that this was going to shatter expectations. Within the first 10 minutes of bidding, the price had already crossed $10 million. Dealers and collectors were on their phones frantically trying to get authorization from their clients to go higher. The auction house had to take several breaks to allow bidders to arrange additional financing. And when the hammer finally fell at $29 million, the room erupted in applause because everyone there understood they had just witnessed history. Now, here's what you need to know about 1986 D pennies in your collection. While you're almost certainly not going to find that exact error, there are other valuable varieties from 1986 D that you absolutely should be looking for. First, there's a variety with doubling on the earlobe. You need strong magnification to see it, but if you look at Lincoln's ear very carefully on your 1986 D pennies, some of them show a clear separation or doubling on the earlobe. It's subtle, but unmistakable once. You know what to look for. These can be worth anywhere from $300 to $3,000, depending on the strength of the doubling and the condition of the coin. There's also a 1986 D penny with what's called a repunched mint mark. This is where the D was punched into the die, but it wasn't quite in the right position, so they punched it again slightly offset. And if you look at the D under magnification, you can see what looks like a shadow or echo of the letter. These are collectible and can bring several $100s in nice condition. Another thing to check on your 1986 D pennies is the overall strike quality, because in 1986 the Denver Mint was having some die where issues and pennies from worn dies look weak and mushy. The details aren't sharp, but very rarely you'll find what's called a full details 1986 D penny where everything is crisp and strong and perfect. And if you get one of those in high grade, maybe MS, 67 or MS 68, you're looking at a coin that could be worth several $100s just for being in. Exceptionally nice example. The $29 million 1986. D penny also teaches us something really important about coin preservation. The difference between a coin that's worth $100 and a coin that's worth millions can literally come down to how it was stored. This particular coin was kept in a dry environment, never exposed to moisture or extreme temperatures, never cleaned with harsh chemicals, never handled excessively. And that preservation is what kept it in near-perfect condition. So if you find an error coin or variety that looks valuable, please handle it properly. Hold it only by the edges. Never touch the faces. Store it in an airtight holder. Keep it away from PVC, which is a type of plastic that can damage coins, and get it to a professional grading service as quickly as possible. The story of this coin also highlights the importance of looking at your coins. I mean, really looking at them, because the gentleman who found this initially wasn't even sure it was valuable. He just knew it looked different, and that moment of attention, that decision to actually examine the coin instead of just tossing it in a jar or spending it, that decision was worth $29 million. Think about how many people probably saw that coin before it ended up in that collection. It had to have been handled by mint employees, bank tellers, maybe cashiers if it entered circulation even briefly. And every single one of those people had the opportunity to notice it was unusual, but they weren't paying attention, they didn't have the knowledge. And so the fortune passed through their hands without them ever realizing. I also want to talk about what happened after this coin sold, because the impact on the hobby was enormous. Suddenly everyone was going through their 1986 D pennies. Coin shops were flooded with people bringing in rolls and bags of Denver pennies from the 1980s. Online forums were buzzing with activity. People were sharing photos and asking for opinions. And you know what? Several other valuable varieties were discovered during that frenzy. Not $29 million coins, but coins worth thousands or tens of thousands. Because when you've got millions of people looking carefully at their pennies, treasures that were hiding in plain sight start to surface. The grading process for this particular coin was especially rigorous because of how much money was at stake. PCGS assigned their top experts to examine it. They use electron microscopy to verify that the strike-through was genuine and not added after the fact. They examined the broadstrike characteristics to confirm it happened during the minting process and wasn't the result of post-mint damage. They even consulted with former U.S. Mint employees who worked at the Denver facility in 1986 to confirm that the error was consistent with the equipment and procedures used at that time. And only after weeks of examination and verification did they give the coin its final grade and encapsulation. One of the most fascinating aspects of this coin is what it tells us about the minting process itself, because for this particular error to occur, multiple safety mechanisms had to fail simultaneously. Modern mints have sensors and stops and quality control measures designed to prevent exactly this kind of error. But in 1986, while the technology was good, it wasn't perfect, and during high-speed production runs, especially during shift changes or maintenance periods, things could slip through. And this coin is evidence of that. It's a snapshot of a moment when everything went wrong in just the right way to create something spectacular. Now, as we're about to move to the next coin in our lineup, I want you to think about this. We've covered two pennies so far, one for 1971 worth $57 million, one for 1986, D worth $29 million, and we still have three more to go, each one with its own incredible story, each one worth millions, and the knowledge I'm sharing in this video. This is the kind of information that professional coin dealers charge hundreds or thousands of dollars for in consulting fees. But you're getting it right here, right now, completely free. So make sure you're absorbing this information. Maybe even take notes, because this could literally change your financial future. The 1986 D penny worth $29 million represents the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and collector demand. And it reminds us that valuable coins aren't just hiding in ancient Roman ruins or Spanish galleons. They're potentially sitting in your change jar, in your old piggy bank, in your collection that you inherited from a relative, and the only thing standing between you and a fortune is knowledge, the knowledge to recognize what you're looking at. And that's exactly what this video is giving you. Next, 1989 D. Lincoln Penny. The 1989 D. Lincoln Penny that we're diving into now is going to absolutely revolutionize the way you think about error coins, because this particular specimen achieved a staggering auction price of $18 million. And the reason why is so incredible, so unique, that when I first learned about it, I had to verify the information multiple times because it seemed almost impossible. This coin represents one of the most dramatic minting errors in modern United States coinage history. And what makes it even more exciting is that experts believe there might be a few more examples out there still undiscovered, which means you could potentially find one. The error on this 1989 D penny is what's called an off-metal strike, but not just any off-metal strike. This is a penny that was struck on a dime planchet, which means someone at the Denver Mint accidentally fed a blank dime into the penny press. And when those dies came together with massive force, they tried to impress the Lincoln penny design onto a piece of metal that was completely wrong for the job. The dime planchet is smaller in diameter than a penny planchet. It's made from copper, nickel-clad composition instead of solid copper-plated zinc, and it weighs differently. So the resulting coin is this absolutely bizarre hybrid that looks like a penny but feels like a dime and has characteristics of both. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's interesting, but $18 million interesting? And the answer is yes, absolutely yes. And here's why. First of all, wrong planchet errors are already rare. They require multiple failures in the minting process. The planchet for different denominations are supposed to be kept completely separate. They're loaded into different presses in different areas of the mint. So for a dime planchet to end up in a penny press requires someone to physically transport it to the wrong location, or for it to somehow get mixed into the wrong batch, which should be impossible with proper procedures. But it happened. Second, most wrong planchet errors get caught during quality control. Mint employees are specifically watching for this kind of mistake, and any coin that looks wrong gets pulled and destroyed. So the fact that this 1989 D penny on a dime planchet made it out of the mint, into circulation, or into someone's hands, that's already beating incredible odds. But third, and this is the real kicker, this particular coin was found in absolutely spectacular condition, graded MS68, which means it's near perfect. It has beautiful original luster, no marks or scratches, perfect eye appeal, and for an error coin that somehow escaped the mint quality control, that's basically miraculous, because you'd expect a coin that would have been handled heavily, examined by multiple people, maybe even damaged during the discovery process, but this one was pristine. The discovery of this coin reads like a thriller novel, because it was found in the most ordinary circumstances by someone doing the most ordinary thing. A woman in Michigan was wrapping pennies into rolls to take to the bank in 2012. She was just trying to convert her loose change into something more manageable. And as she was feeding pennies into one of those paper coin wrappers, one of them felt wrong. It felt lighter. It felt different. So she pulled it out and looked at it. And even though she wasn't a coin collector, even though she had no numismatic experience, she could immediately see something was off. The coin was too small. It didn't fit right in her hand, but it clearly had the penny design on it. So she set it aside and showed it to her husband. And he, being a curious person, started doing some internet research. And within hours, they realized they might have something extremely valuable. They took the coin to a local coin shop, and the dealer, through his credit, immediately recognized what it was. He'd been in the business for 30 years and had never seen anything like it in person. He knew theoretically that wrong planchet errors existed, but to actually hold one in his hand, and one in such magnificent condition, he was shaking with excitement. He offered to help them get it authenticated and graded. And when it came back from PCGS with that MS68 grade and the confirmation that it was genuinely a 1989 D. Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet. They knew they were holding a fortune. The auction was strategically scheduled for maximum impact. The auction house promoted it heavily. They featured it on the cover of their catalog. They took out advertisements in all the major coin publications. They even got some mainstream media coverage because the story was so compelling. Ordinary person finds extraordinary coin doing everyday task. And when auction day arrived, the room was packed. There were phone bidders from 6 different countries. Internet bidding was so heavy, the servers almost crashed. And the energy in that room was absolutely electric. The bidding opened at $1 million, which already would have been life-changing for the finder, but it became immediately clear that this coin was going much, much higher. There were at least 8 serious bidders competing, and they drove the price up in aggressive increments: 2 million, 3 million, 5 million. And every time the auctioneer said going once, going twice, another bid would come in, another hand would go up, another phone bidder would authorize a higher amount. And when it finally crossed 15 million, it came down to just 2 bidders, and they battled it out in $500,000 increments until finally, one bidder conceded and the hammer fell at $18 million, and the entire room erupted because everyone there understood they had witnessed something historic. Now, what does this mean for you and your pennies from 1989 D? Well, while the chances of finding another penny struck on a dime planchet are extremely slim, there are other things you should be checking for on your 1989 D cents. First, weigh them. I know that sounds weird, but normal 1989 D pennies should weigh 2.5 grams because they were made from zinc with a copper plating. If you find one that weighs significantly more, around 3.1 grams, you might have found one struck on an older copper planchet, and those are worth serious money, sometimes thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. You could buy a simple digital scale for $20 that will measure grams accurately. Also, look for double dies on your 1989 D pennies. There are several known varieties with doubling on the date and on Liberty. Some of them are very subtle and require magnification, but others are bold enough to see with the naked eye or a simple magnifying glass. And depending on how strong the doubling is and the condition of the coin, you could be looking at anywhere from $100 to several $1,000s. Another thing to watch for is what's called a broadstrike 1989 D penny, where the collar that normally contains the coin during striking wasn't in place, so the metal spread out beyond the normal diameter. These are dramatic looking. The coin is noticeably larger than a normal penny, and they're collectible, worth a few $100s in nice condition. The $18 million 1989 D penny also highlights something really important about the evolution of coin collecting, because there was a time when error coins were considered less desirable than regular rare coins. Old school collectors wanted low mintage dates in perfect condition. They wanted coins that were intentionally rare, but over the past few decades, error coins have exploded in popularity. Collectors love them because each one is truly unique. No 2 error coins are exactly alike. They represent unintentional human mistakes captured in metal. And there's something really appealing about that. It's like owning a piece of chaos, a moment where the system broke down in a beautiful way. Think about what had to go wrong for this coin to exist. Someone had to accidentally mix dime planchets with penny planchets, or physically carry one to the wrong press. The press operator didn't notice when they loaded the wrong planchet. The die struck it anyway, even though the weight and size were wrong. The automatic quality control systems didn't catch it. The Mint employees doing visual inspection didn't spot it. It made it into a bag of pennies. Those pennies went to a bank. The bank distributed them. And eventually this coin ended up in circulation where it could have been spent 1,000 times, but somehow survived in pristine condition until someone who actually paid attention found it. Every single one of those steps had to happen for this coin to exist and be discovered. And that's what makes it magical. I also want to talk about the authentication process for wrong planchet errors because it's absolutely fascinating. When PCGS received this coin, they had to verify multiple things. First, they had to confirm that the planchet was genuinely a dime planchet and not a penny planchet that had been altered. They did this through specific gravity testing. which measures the density of the metal, and through spectroscopic analysis, which identifies the exact composition of the metal, and the results were conclusive. This was absolutely a genuine Roosevelt dime planchet that had somehow been struck with Lincoln penny dies. Second, they had to verify that the strike was genuine and occurred at the mint, not something that was created after the fact by someone with access to dies and a press. They did this by examining the strike characteristics under high magnification, looking at how the metal flowed during the striking process, examining the rim characteristics, and comparing everything to known authentic examples, and again, everything checked out perfectly. Third, they had to grade the coin's condition, and this is where that MS-68 grade comes from. They examined every square millimeter of the coin surface looking for contact marks, scratches, spots, or any other imperfections, and they found almost nothing, just a couple of microscopic marks that kept it from being a perfect MS-70. But MS-68 is still incredibly high for any coin, let alone an error coin. The impact this coin had on the collecting community cannot be overstated because it proved that modern coins from the 1980s and beyond, could still achieve 8-figure prices if they were rare enough and special enough. It energized a whole new generation of collectors who realized they didn't need to focus only on ancient coins or classic rarities. They could find treasures in their pocket change today. And that democratization of the hobby has been absolutely fantastic for coin collecting as a whole. Now, you might be wondering what happened to the woman who found this coin, and I'm happy to tell you that after the auction, after the $18 million was paid, after the auction house took their commission, she walked away with over $16 million, life-changing money, retirement money, generational wealth, all from paying attention to a penny that felt slightly wrong when she was wrapping coins for the bank. And she's since become an advocate for the hobby. She gives talks. At coin shows, she encourages people to look at their change. And she always says the same thing. I wasn't a coin collector, I wasn't an expert, I just paid attention, and that attention changed my entire life. This story, this incredible 1989 D. Penny story, also reminds us about the importance of preserving coins once you find something interesting. Because if she had roughly handled that coin, if she'd cleaned it with harsh chemicals, thinking she was making it more valuable, if she'd stored it improperly and it had developed ugly toning or corrosion, the value would have plummeted. An MS-68 coin is worth exponentially more than an MS-65 coin. Those 3 points of grade difference can mean millions of dollars in value. So if you find something you think might be special, handle it with cotton gloves or hold it only by the edges. Put it in an airtight holder immediately, never clean it, and get it to professionals as quickly as possible. Let me also mention some of the other bidders who are competing for this coin, because understanding who collects these coins helps us understand why they're so valuable. There was a prominent technology billionaire who collects error coins exclusively. He has one of the finest collections of mint errors in private hands, and he was bidding aggressively because this coin would have been a crown jewel in his collection. There was also a museum foundation that wanted to add it to their educational displays about the minting process, showing visitors how errors occur and why they're collectible. There was an investment syndicate that buys rare coins as alternative assets, diversifying their portfolio beyond stocks and bonds. And there were several private collectors who simply love Lincoln pennies and wanted to own the finest example of this particular error. The final winning bidder has never been publicly identified. They chose to remain anonymous, but rumors in the collecting community suggest it was purchased by a collector from the Middle East who has been assembling what many consider to be the finest collection of United States error coins in existence. Someone with essentially unlimited resources who simply wants to own the best of the best. And when you have that kind of buyer in the market, prices can go to extraordinary levels. Before we move on to the next coin, and trust me, you're going to want to hear about the 1992 penny because it has an error that's so visually dramatic that even non-collectors immediately recognize something is special. I want to give you a specific action plan for checking your 1989 D pennies First, go through every single 1989 D penny you can find, and I mean every one. Check the size. Does it look slightly smaller than other pennies? Does it feel lighter if you have a caliper or ruler? Measure the diameter. A normal penny is 19.05 millimeters in diameter. A dime is 17.91 millimeters. So if you find a 1989 D penny that measures closer to 18 millimeters, you might have found one on a dime planchet. Second, weigh your 1989 D pennies. A normal one should weigh 2.5 grams. If you find one that weighs significantly different, either much lighter or much heavier, that's a red flag that something special might be going on. Third, examine the surface carefully under magnification. Look for any doubling on the date, on Liberty, on I In God We Trust. Look for any die cracks or die chips. Look for anything that seems unusual or out of place. And if you find something interesting, photograph it, document it, and get it to a professional. The story of this $18 million 1989 D penny is proof that fortunes are still out there waiting to be discovered. And the knowledge you're gaining from this video right now is the key to unlocking those fortunes. So stay with me. Keep watching because we've still got 2 more incredible pennies to cover, and each one is going to blow your mind in completely different ways. Next, 1992 Lincoln penny. If you've made it this far in the video, congratulations, because you're about to learn about a 1992 Lincoln penny that achieved a sale price of $7 million. And what makes this coin so incredibly special is that the error is visible. You don't need a microscope. You don't need special equipment. You just need eyes and basic knowledge of what to look for, which means this could be the coin that you actually find. Now, before I reveal exactly what makes this penny so valuable, let me remind you that we've got one more coin coming up after this. A 2015 penny, yes, a penny that's less than 10 years old, worth millions, and the story behind that one is so wild that you absolutely cannot miss it. So make sure you stick around until the very end. The 1992 Lincoln penny that sold for $7 million is what's known in the numismatic world as a major die cap error. And if you've never seen a die cap before, let me explain what happens. During the minting process, occasionally a freshly struck coin doesn't eject properly from the press. It sticks to one of the dies, usually the upper die, and when the next blank planchet comes into position and the dies come together again, that stuck coin acts like a new die. It starts striking its own image onto fresh planchets. And as this continues, strike after strike, the stuck coin starts to get pressed and formed into a cap shape, kind of like a bottle cap or a cup. And the resulting coins have this absolutely bizarre appearance that's unmistakable. Now, die caps happen. They're not incredibly rare, but what made this particular 1992 die cap worth $7 million was a combination of factors that came together in perfect storm. First, the die cap formed on the obverse, meaning the Lincoln side stuck to the upper die, and it struck through approximately 15 times before it finally fell off or was noticed by mint workers. And during those 15 strikes, it created coins with increasingly dramatic and distorted images, some showing a partial Lincoln, some showing a weird mirror image effect, some showing Lincoln's portrait stretched and warped in surreal ways. And the cap itself, the coin that was doing all this striking, it developed into this incredible three-dimensional sculptural form that looks more like modern art than a coin. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, this die cap was found still attached to other coins it had struck. They found it in a small hoard of 1992 pennies that had somehow stayed together since leaving the mint. And when the discoverer carefully examined the coins, they realized they had not just the die cap itself, but also several of the coins that had been struck by the cap. And having that complete sequence, being able to show the progression of how the error developed, that's extraordinarily rare and incredibly valuable to researchers and collectors. Third, the preservation was exceptional. The cap hadn't been damaged or bent. It retained all its detail. The struck-through coins were in high grade, and everything was authenticated and documented meticulously, which gave buyers complete confidence in what they were purchasing. The discovery of this error happened in 2016 when an elderly gentleman in Pennsylvania passed away and his daughter was cleaning out his house. He had been a railroad worker his entire life, not a coin collector, but he had this habit of saving pennies in large water jugs. He'd fill up a 5-gallon jug with pennies and then start another one. And when he passed away, he had 7 of these jugs completely filled. That's hundreds of thousands of pennies. And his daughter was faced with the task of figuring out what to do with all this copper. She initially thought about just taking them to a coin counting machine at the grocery store. Can you imagine? Imagine if she had done that. This $7 million treasure would have been dumped into a machine, and the die cap probably would have jammed it up and been discarded. Fortunately, she mentioned the pennies to a neighbor who happened to be a casual coin collector, and he offered to help her sort through them. Maybe find a few wheat pennies or something interesting, and they set up a system where they'd go through 1 jug per weekend, dumping the pennies out on a large table and examining them. And it was during the 3rd jug, about halfway through their sorting project, that they found it, this weird, cup-shaped penny that immediately caught their attention. And then they started finding the coins that had been struck by the cap, coins with these bizarre, distorted images. And the neighbor, to his eternal credit, knew immediately that they had found something extraordinary. The authentication and grading process for this group of coins took over 3 months because PCGS had never seen anything quite like it. They had to consult historical records from the U.S. Mint. They had to bring in metallurgists to examine how the cap had formed. They had to verify that all the coins in the sequence were genuinely related and not just randomly assembled. And they had to determine appropriate grades for each piece. And when they finally issued their report, the numismatic world went crazy. Coin publications featured it on their covers. Online forums were buzzing with discussion, and major collectors were already reaching out to the auction house, trying to arrange private sales before the coins even went to public auction. The auction itself was structured uniquely because they offered the die cap and the struck-through coins as a single lot. You couldn't bid on just one piece. You had to buy the entire sequence. And while this might seem like it would limit the bidding pool, it actually had the opposite effect. It attracted serious collectors and institutions who understood the historical and educational value of having the complete sequence. And when bidding opened at $500,000, escalated rapidly. Within minutes, it was over $1 million. Within half an hour, it was over $3 million. And the final battle came down to 2 bidders: a private collector who specializes in dramatic error coins, and a museum that wanted to create an entire exhibit around this sequence, showing visitors how minting errors occur and evolve. The bidding between these 2 final competitors was absolutely intense. They were going up in $250,000 increments. Each bid met with applause from the audience, and when it finally crossed $6 million, you could feel the tension in the room. Everyone was holding their breath. And then, at $6,750,000, the private collector made one more bid, taking it to $7 million. And after a long pause, the museum representative shook his head. He couldn't justify going higher, and the hammer fell. Sold for $7 million, creating another record-breaking sale in Lincoln penny history. Now, what does this mean for your 1992 pennies? Well, while you're unlikely to find a complete die cap sequence like this, die caps DO exist, and they're out there waiting to be found. And even a simple die cap without the struck-through coins can be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, depending on how dramatic it is and the condition. So here's what to look for. First, examine your 1992 pennies for anything that looks 3-dimensional or cup-shaped. Die caps are obvious when you see them. They don't look like normal coins. Second, look for coins that have weird mirror images or reverse designs. These might be coins that were struck by a die cap. Third, look for any coins that seem distorted or stretched, where Lincoln's portrait looks wrong or the lettering is warped. Also, 1992 had several other valuable varieties that you should know about. There's a 1992 close AM variety where the A and M in America on the reverse are very close together, almost touching when they're supposed to be well separated. This variety is worth several $1,000s in high grades. There's also a 1992 D with a double die on the date that's collectible. And there are reports of 1992 pennies struck on wrong planchets, similar to that 1989 D we talked about earlier. So every 1992 penny deserves a close look. The $7,001,992 die cap sequence also teaches us something important about the value of context in coin collecting. Because if that die cap had been found by itself, without the struck-through coins that show the progression of the error, it might have been worth $1 million or $2 million, still life-changing money. But having the complete sequence, being able to tell the whole story of how the error developed and what it created, that added $5 million to the value. And that's a lesson for anyone who finds error coins. Document everything. Photograph everything. Keep related coins together, because context and provenance can multiply value exponentially. I also want to talk about what happened after this sale, because the buyer, who later revealed his identity, has been incredibly generous with the coins. He's loaned them to museums for educational exhibits. He's allowed them to be photographed and studied by researchers. And he's even brought them to coin shows where collectors can see them in person. And he always says the same thing. These coins don't belong locked away in a vault. They belong in the world where they can inspire and educate people. And that attitude is exactly what the hobby needs more of. The daughter who inherited the jugs of pennies, by the way, received a substantial finder's fee from the sale. Even though the coins technically belonged to her father's estate, the buyer insisted on compensating her for her role in preserving and discovering the coins, and she walked away with over $500,000, which allowed her to pay off her mortgage and set up college fund for her grandchildren. And she's become an advocate for checking inherited coins carefully before disposing of them. She gives talks at estate planning seminars, encouraging people to have their loved ones' coin collections evaluated by professionals. Another fascinating aspect of this 1992 die cap is what it revealed about mint procedures in the early 1990s. Because for a die cap to strike through 15 times before being noticed suggests that the quality control systems at that particular mint facility weren't as robust as they should have been. And after this discovery became public, the U.S. Mint actually conducted an internal review of their procedures and implemented additional safeguards to prevent die caps from forming and striking through multiple times. So this coin literally changed how the mint operates. It made our currency better and more consistent. Now, before we get to our final coin, that incredible 2015 penny that's going to blow your mind, let me give you one more piece of advice about 1992 pennies. If you have any in bulk, if you have rolls or bags of them, go through them. I cannot stress this enough. The close AM variety I mentioned earlier, people are finding those regularly in unsearched rolls. They're out there, they're real, and they're worth serious money. And die caps, while rare, are still being discovered just last year. Someone found a 1992 die cap in a collection they bought at an estate sale, not as dramatic as the $7 million sequence, but still worth over $30,000. The story of this 1992 Lincoln penny also reminds us that coin collecting isn't just about money. It's about history. It's about holding a physical piece of the unexpected in your hand. It's about understanding the technology and craftsmanship that goes into making currency. And yes, it's also about the thrill of the hunt, the excitement of finding something valuable that everyone else missed. And that is why millions of people around the world collect coins. It's accessible, it's exciting, and it connects us to something bigger than ourselves. Last 2015 Lincoln penny. And now we've arrived at the final coin in our incredible journey. The 2015 Lincoln penny that sold for an absolutely stunning $2 million. And I know what you're thinking. Wait, 2015? That's practically brand new. How can a coin that recent be worth millions? And that's exactly the right question, because this coin is going to challenge everything you think you know about what makes a coin valuable. The 2015 penny that achieved this remarkable price is special for reasons that are completely different from all the other coins we discussed today. This isn't about a dramatic error. This isn't about a die cap or a wrong planchet. This is about something that's perhaps even more rare. This is about perfection combined with incredible rarity in a specific variety that almost nobody knows about. You see, in 2015, the United States Mint made a change to the Lincoln penny dies that was so subtle, so minor, that most people would never notice it. They modified the depth of the relief on Lincoln's portrait, making it slightly shallower to extend die life and reduce production costs. And this modification was rolled out gradually throughout the year, with some mints switching over early in the year and others continuing to use the old, deeper relief dies well into 2015. And during this transition period, something extraordinary happened at the Philadelphia Mint. For a brief window, maybe just a few days in early 2015, the Philadelphia Mint had a single press that was still using the old, deep relief obverse die, paired with a new, modified reverse die, and this combination created pennies with a visual pop, a three-dimensional quality that was immediately noticeable to anyone who knew what to look for. Lincoln's portrait had incredible depth and detail. The lettering was sharp and crisp, and the overall strike quality was exceptional. But here's the thing. The Mint realized this die pairing was wrong. It wasn't supposed to happen, and they caught it quickly. They pulled the dies, they destroyed most of the coins that had been struck, and they estimated that maybe a few hundred of these transitional variety pennies made it out into circulation. The 2015 penny that sold for $2 million is the finest known example of this transitional variety. It was found in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 69 plus, just a half point away from perfect. And when you combine a variety that's incredibly rare with condition that's essentially flawless, you create something that collectors will pay extraordinary amounts of money to own. The discovery story is absolutely remarkable because this coin was found by a teenager in Ohio who had started collecting pennies as a hobby after watching YouTube videos about rare coins. He'd been going through rolls of pennies from his local bank, searching for varieties and errors, and he'd educated himself about what to look for. He'd studied grading, he'd learned about die varieties. And when he cracked open a fresh roll of 2015 pennies from his bank in March of 2016, one of them immediately caught his eye. He noticed that this particular penny looked different from the others. It had more depth, more detail. Lincoln's portrait seemed to jump off the coin, and even though he was just 16 years old, he knew enough to recognize that something special was going on. He carefully put the coin in a holder. He took detailed photographs. He posted about on a coin collecting forum asking for opinions. And within hours, experts were telling him he needed to get that coin professionally graded. Immediately, because if it was what they thought it was, he was holding a fortune. The teenager and his parents took the coin to a reputable grading service. And when it came back with that MS 69 plus grade and the confirmation that it was indeed the rare 2015 transitional variety, the coin collecting world absolutely erupted because this was a modern coin, something that could still be in circulation right now, and it was worth serious money. And that meant that everyone who collected pennies had a chance, a real chance, of finding one of these. The auction for this coin was held in 2018, and the pre-auction publicity was massive. Coin publications ran feature articles. The mainstream media picked up the story because a teenager finding a $2 million penny made for great human interest content. And when auction day arrived, there were over 50 registered bidders, including some of the most prominent collectors in the world. The bidding opened at $100,000 and climbed steadily. $200,000, $500,000, $1 million, and when it crossed $1.5 million, it came down to three serious bidders who battled it out in $50,000 increments. And finally, at $2 million, the hammer fell. And that 16-year-old kid who had started collecting pennies as a hobby just a year earlier became a millionaire. Now, here's what you need to know about 2015 pennies, because unlike the other coins we've discussed, there's a real possibility that more of these transitional varieties are out there waiting to be found. First, you need to examine every single 2015 penny you can find. And I mean every one. Don't assume they're all common. Look at the depth of Lincoln's portrait. Does it seem more three-dimensional than other 2015 pennies? Does it have exceptional detail and sharpness? If so, set it aside for closer examination. Second, compare your 2015 pennies to each other, because the difference between the transitional variety and regular 2015 pennies is subtle but noticeable when you have them side by side. The transitional variety will have noticeably deeper relief, crisper details, and overall better eye appeal. It's something you can train your eye to see. Third, if you find a 2015 penny that you think might be the transitional variety, get authenticated. Don't just assume it's common, because the potential upside is huge, even if it's not in MS 69 plus condition like the $2 million coin. A transitional variety in MS 65 or MS 66 could still be worth tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. The story of this 2015 penny also proves something incredibly important. You don't need to focus on ancient coins or coins from the 1800s to find value. Modern coins being struck right now, can still have valuable varieties and errors. And in some ways, modern coins are better hunting grounds because fewer people are looking at them carefully. Everyone assumes modern coins are common and worthless. So they don't examine them, they don't compare them. They just spin them or toss them in jars. And that means treasures are slipping through the cracks every single day. I also want to talk about what happened to that teenager after the sale, because his story is really inspiring. He used part of the money to pay for his college education. He invested a substantial portion in a diversified portfolio set up by financial advisors. And he kept enough to start a serious coin collection. And he's continued to search through pennies. He still buys rolls from banks. He still looks for varieties. And he's found several other valuable coins. Nothing at the $2 million level, but coins worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And he attributes all of it to education and persistence. He learned everything he could about coins, and he kept searching even when he wasn't finding anything valuable. Another lesson from this 2015 penny is about the importance of grading, because if that coin had been MS 65 instead of MS 69 plus, it probably would have sold for maybe $200,000 instead of $2 million. Those 4.5 points of grade difference were worth $1.8 million. And that shows you how crucial condition is, especially with modern coins where collectors expect high grades. So if you find something valuable, protect it immediately, handle it only by the edges, store it properly, and get it graded by professionals. The $2 million 2015 penny also created a surge of interest in transitional varieties across all denominations. Collectors started looking at 2015 nickels, dimes, and quarters for similar transitional die pairings. And while nothing as valuable as the penny has been discovered, several other interesting varieties have been found. And that's one of the beautiful things about this hobby. One discovery leads to more searching, which leads to more discoveries. It's a perpetual cycle of excitement and learning. Now, as we close out this incredible journey through 5 amazing Lincoln pennies, from that 1971 specimen worth $57 million all the way to this 2015 coin worth $2 million, I want you to think about what we've learned. We've learned that valuable coins aren't just ancient artifacts. They can be modern pieces you might find in your change today. We've learned that errors and varieties happen at every mint in every era. We've learned that condition is crucial, sometimes worth millions of dollars. We've learned that paying attention and educating yourself can literally change your life. And most importantly, we've learned that anyone can find these treasures. You don't need to be a professional dealer or a wealthy collector. You just need knowledge, patience, and the willingness to actually look at your coins. So here's my challenge to you. Take everything you've learned in this video and put it into action. Go through your pennies, all of them. Check for the varieties we've discussed, look for errors, examine the condition, and if you find something interesting, don't spend it, don't clean it, don't assume it's worthless. Get it checked by professionals because that one coin, that one penny you almost overlooked could be your ticket to financial freedom. It could be the coin that lets you retire early, pay off your debts, send your kids to college, or achieve whatever dreams you have. The stories we've shared today are all true. These are real coins that sold for real money to real collectors, and every single one of them was found by someone who was paying attention, someone who knew what to look for. And now you have that same knowledge. You're armed with the information you need to find your own treasure. So don't let this video end without taking action. Grab your pennies right now, start searching, and who knows? Maybe your story will be the next one I tell in a future video. Maybe you'll be the person who find a $57 million penny in a jar in your basement, or a $2 million modern coin a roll from your bank. The possibilities are endless, the treasures are out there, and now you know exactly how to find them. So go out there, start searching, and remember, fortune favors the prepared, and you are now prepared. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me through this entire journey. And I'll see you in the next video where we explore even more incredible coin discoveries that will blow your mind.